March council meeting. I'm going to ask Councillor James Hobson, hopefully dog is now all under control, to begin with a karakia.
It's a new dog. E o mātua, tiakina mai mātou, mai te rangi ki te whenua, mai te whenua ki te rangi. Kororia ki ngā atua kia tau te Māori o te whenua. Whakaro pai ki ngā tangata, tuturu whakamaua, kia tina, hamia hui e, tai
Kia. Can I do a very warm welcome to Arlo, our youth councillor, joining us this morning. As always, we encourage you to participate at some stage during the proceedings of today. I've received no apologies. I acknowledge Councillor Skeggs has been tied up with jury service on a few of other council business. Great to have you back on board. I have no change to the confirmation of the order of business. Is there any specific interest relating to today's agenda that any member needs to declare? That being the case, I'll move to public forum and I'd invite David Miller to the table to present on the Te Hunanui Beach Sports Hub. Welcome to you both. We've set aside 5 minutes as an individual presentation for it and look forward to your presentation.
Good morning, Mayor and councillors. I'm Dave Miller, and with me is the architect Virginia Fay, whose design work you will be looking at today. I grew up in the Nelson region and started playing beach volleyball at Te Hunanui Beach 30 years ago. My involvement in the sport took me all around the world until in 2020, as director of the New Zealand Beach Tour, I brought the national tour back to Te Hunanui Beach after a 20-year absence. Subsequent conversations with the NRDA, along with moving back to the region, have resulted in this proposal today, with the goal to do something permanent here and create a legacy for a beach and region close to my heart. Hopefully you have already read my proposal. I will now highlight some of the key points while you watch this video. Tatahi Central is a relaxed all-season hub where wellness meets the sand. Whether you're hitting the court, stretching out in a chill zone, or just soaking up the view, this is your space to reset, reconnect, and feel good naturally. This has inspired our slogan, "Find your balance at the beach." We'll replace the current cafe with a vibrant multi-use hub with space to relax, refuel, and play. Alongside local food and chill zones, we'll introduce new energy with beach football, beach tennis, and the exciting global sport of padel, all adding to a thriving beach culture. We'll provide shared facilities to support beach users and clubs, including gear storage, washdown areas, bathrooms, and space to meet. It's about making the beach more functional, inclusive, and future-ready. The new pavilion will be a standout venue for Aotearoa, ideal for medium-sized events, from national sports comps to music gigs and business conferences. A modern coastal venue that brings people together in a stunningly beautiful and unique setting. To the left end, you will see the spacious restaurant and rooftop space with amazing views over the bay. And then the cafe behind that, connected by decks to the play area. 4 groups have already indicated a desire to be the first tenants of the garages, including kite surf, surf ski, and kayak. Beach sports wanting to be involved include volleyball, football, frisbee, and tennis. Court sports offered will include padel, 3-on-3 basketball, and futsal. And also on site will be a baseball batting cage and a surf wave pool. The restaurant and cafe will attract many diners, and other users will include beachgoers, cyclists, and runners, along with the guests of Natureland, the Fun Park, and the Holiday Park. The game changer in this proposal is the events that such a venue could host and the subsequent income and economic benefit generated, especially from weddings and conferences for which there is a shortage of venues in our region. Local event agencies have suggested a conservative target of 2 domestic conferences per month, which, using figures from the BEIA, could bring $7 million per year of direct economic benefit to the local community. By activating the beach reserve year-round, this project will help transform Te Hunanui into a 4-season destination that promotes well-being, tourism, and sustainable economic growth. The sustainability principles we have chosen will make the new Beach Sports Hub not just a place for sport, but a living, breathing model of sustainable design, resilient, regenerative, and deeply rooted in its environment. Funding streams we will seek include the Council Long-Term Plan, investors, benefactors, sponsorships and partnerships. What I'm asking Council for today is support for the concept, approval to build on this site, and further down the track, funding via the long-term plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. A question from Councillor Pakipaki, and I'm happy to take. There's a lot of work that the presenters put into their proposal, so I'm happy to take a few questions from colleagues. Councillor Pakipaki.
Kia ora, David, thank you. You're obviously aware of the surf club project that's going through now. When that was presented to us, this is exactly what I had in mind in terms of a Te Hunanui sports hub, whereas this other project has kind of gone in a different direction. What is it that this project provides that the surf club doesn't? Oh, sorry, assuming that you know of the plans and things around the surf.
Yeah, I've obviously followed that a little bit and talked to the surf club about whether even it was possible to do something together. But yeah, their needs are very different and specific. And I think most of the clubs and groups that I've talked to, the other users that would use the hub that I'm proposing, don't have such specific needs. They're much more general, much easier to combine together into one facility and give shared facilities to. I think if I had thought, how could I incorporate surf lifesaving into it if that was an option, and I realised that that would probably take up a good half of the facility and make it very specific and be much harder to be creative with it and fit everybody else.
So I guess just to follow up on that question is that the surf club is not really going to accommodate the target audience that you're wanting to accommodate here with a wider, broader community.
No, and I think they've made that clear that their facilities are quite specific, and it's very difficult for them to incorporate everybody else into their facility.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, through the Mayor. I'm just wondering, I can't think of anything similar. I'm just wondering whether there's this model, whether it's been done anywhere else in New Zealand or whether we have to think about somewhere in Australia where they have a kind of a similar idea or services on a beach.
Yes, I believe this will be the first in the world, actually. But I did take part of my idea originally from a similar concept, which hasn't yet been built at The Hague in the Netherlands. I worked with them a couple of seasons on their beach volleyball events, and the guys on the beach there are proposing, or they've got plans to build, and the cities have approved it, but they just haven't done it yet, a similar type venue, which would be, again, trying to achieve similar things that I am with making it year-round, multi-purpose, et cetera, et cetera. So I've taken some of those ideas into what I've proposed here. And yes, there is some similarities I've heard from other people I've talked to from Australian surf surf clubs and up and down the Australian coast, that they do tend to have more public facilities than maybe some of our surf lifesaving clubs do. Yeah, and restaurants and that sort of thing.
I mean, thanks, that's exciting. I am also wondering, have you guys identified any of the risks? So it's a lot of money and a big, massive idea, but I'm just wondering what are the major barriers, and I'd imagine local government funding might be one of the large ones, but I was just wondering if there are any other risks in and around delivering a project or getting it started.
Yeah, obviously funding is the biggest one, and resource consent, but hopefully because the Surf Lifesaving Club are paving the way on that, that may help in that area.
Quickie from me, and then one from the local liaison councillor. What's the estimated budget of the facility that you've presented to us? And noting with the Surf Life Club, council made a contribution of 1/3. Did you have in mind what scale of contribution would be required from council through the long-term plan to be able to make it stack up?
We haven't got to the stage of being able to get proper costings with our design. So it's only ballpark estimates that we could
Order of magnitude?
come, I would say probably at least 10 million. But it's hard to know with building costs the way that they seem to skyrocket at the or whatever at the moment. So, and yeah, I didn't have a figure from council because I don't believe you have a set pattern or rule on percentages.
It's more a question of how much of the funding you think you could achieve beyond the ratepayer. To be frank, there's not a day that goes by that I don't have a wonderful idea about how I could spend or we collectively could spend ratepayers' money.
Yeah.
The hard part is we're always looking to try and partner and leverage that money. I asked the question the other way around. How much do you think you can raise of roughly order of magnitude 10 million from the private sector or philanthropic sources to such a project?
I would raise as much as I need to make it happen. So I know it's hard to say, but I would want to ask council for 50%. But if the costs are significantly greater, then obviously the percentage from council I would expect to be lower, and I would have to raise more from wherever else I possibly could. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Councillor Roller?
Thanks, Mayor Nick, and I'll just start with a comment that this shows why the liaison roles work well, because Dave reached out to me late last year suggesting a facility down at Te Hunanui, and I said, best you go and get a design and present it to council, and that video in the packet you got was his work in his spare time, so it wasn't just a silly idea getting proposed, so well done on the team on that. Dave, do you see the sports that would be utilising this facility being year round? We get a lot of feedback that a lot of the sports that are down at Te Hunanui tend to be seasonal. Do you see this being a year round facility for sport?
There'd definitely be tailoring off in the colder months, because a lot of the sports are beach, sand-based or outdoor-based sports like padel on the court, hard court sports, they would obviously carry on all year round. And the idea with it being multi-purpose as a venue would try to bring in other things other than sports more in the winter with the conference season and other events that you could run there. On the sand court, you could put down a floor and have a different type of sport or a music event or a movie night or whatever, because that could become a very flexible venue, not just for sand sports.
Last question from the Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Dave, for an interesting proposal. And I looked through it. I didn't quite have time to look through every bit of the detail. Can you just explain what the model would be in your mind? Are you talking about a council-owned facility?
Yes, that's what I've envisaged, that it would be a council-owned facility and all the main infrastructure.
Yeah.
So maybe some of the fit-out stuff isn't council-owned, but the main facility, I see that being probably the best model, being that it's council land, and we want it to be a community long-term legacy for multiple groups to use.
Okay.
But probably I've come up with the idea of it being like a long-term management lease that then manages it, because there'd be so many other things going on and so many subleases and other people using it, restaurant manager, cafe manager, all the different groups that would hire a garage or whatever. So that's kind of the model that I think would be work. I put some in the back of the proposal about that and about the idea of there being a funding model to council from the lease, being a percentage of all income taken across the whole facility, and that would go into a reserve management fund so that the money is put back into managing and maintaining the reserve, so that the reserve could become completely self-sustainable, but council controlled with input from the people that are leasing facilities down there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Look, on behalf of Council, David, can I thank you both for the significant amount of work that you put into the proposal. I don't want to understate how big a mountain it is to climb. I was part of the development of the Saxon Stadium, a $15 million facility 15 years ago, and it was a long time and a hard graft to get there. Our council is under huge fiscal pressure, and so I don't want to raise expectations. Such a proposal would need to be considered through our LTP process, of which we will be seeking submissions early next year. I'd encourage you to continue to engage with groups like the Te Huna Nui Business Association and get a feel for the level of broader support, and we look forward to an ongoing discussion. My take on it is I know of about 4 or 5 projects of this scale being proposed as the LTP, and this council collectively has got some very hard choices to make about which of those would proceed and not. The bit I think everybody around this table shares is recognise that Te Huna Nui Beach is a exceptional asset for the city, and what we do with it through our management plan and the like is a big call for us in future. So again, on behalf of council, can I thank you both?
Thank you.
I now ask Jeremy Matthews to present to council in public forum on behalf of the Te Huna Nui Hills Residents Association for the public's information. The application for this public presentation did come in 3 hours late. It relates to an item on the agenda. Our standing orders gives the discretion to the chair as to whether to allow it. The application was complying, but was late. To me, it was not good faith for us to simply say, we'll come along next month, when effectively we have it on our agenda today. I did consult with both the Chief Executive and the Deputy Mayor about that. So a little bit of discretion. Jeremy, we've got 10 minutes aside for you.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Were you live? Action, okay. Thank you for your discretion, and we do appreciate it. I'll take that back into the hive. And good morning to you all. Well, I represent the Te Huna Nui Hills Residents Group. It's above Te Huna Nui Beach. We've been advocating for solutions to the care and management of our neighbourhood roads, Bisley Moana Aves. This is because, like every homeowner in New Zealand, including everyone in this room, of course, we reserve the right to seek quiet enjoyment of our properties, ours being on a 40,000-year-old slip zone that is essentially stable, but is subject to stringent council permissions regarding weight on, weight off. And our LIM reports all contain sections 72 and 74. The residents I represent here today, and who have voiced concerns over the years, are united in one natural and understandable yearning to protect and enjoy their residential streets and the homes they're in. This is neither unusual nor unreasonable. After some lobbying, council installed speed humps on Bisley Moana Ave. Are we all familiar where Bisley and Moana Ave is? Okay, we're all clear. That's great. On Bisley Moana Ave to calm traffic and reduce burgeoning through traffic. That's rat running. However, council also routed heavy buses across the route, such buses being manifestly unsuitable to these serpentine avenues. I would challenge there'd be hardly a person in this room who hasn't wanted to put his foot down around some of those lovely, sexy corners on Bisley and Moana Ave and the nice long straights that beckon a bit of a squirt. I am myself and a resident and guilty of this, but we understand that it is a seductive piece of roading, but unsuitable for the buses. Now, herein lies the problem behind the problem. It is heavy vehicles. It's not the speed bumps. They're not the problem. It's the heavy vehicles, especially buses that use them, is the problem behind the problem. Especially as it's on still plastic landscape every 20 minutes. That's the problem. The buses are almost always empty, and we have a game out called Spot the Passenger, just to rub salt into the itch. So the talking point is, why is it a problem? Real-time impact on residents' properties through the combination of heavy vehicles traversing speed bumps produces multiple axle downward pressure, like jackhammers, vibrating the ground multiple times, where houses are now physically shaking. Shower doors, windows, pictures are moving in some of the houses on the sides of Bisley and Moana Ave. Would there be anyone here in this room who would be happy to live like that? It's a rhetorical question. Further, And that's every 20 minutes for the buses. Thanks. You can set your watch by it. Further, these roads are also used as a detour route during Rocks Road closures, despite NZTA advice in writing that Bisley and Moana Avenues had not and never will be designated as detour routes because of the underlying slope instability issues. Against this advice, Council has issued a detour map for light vehicles. Fine, but heavy vehicles also use it because without a signage top and bottom that heavy through traffic is banned, there's no way to police where the trucks come up and over those hills as they do when the Rocks Road is closed. And of course, there are the speed bumps waiting to do their job. So we came up with some suggestions that we would ask you to consider. The speed humps must be removed, even though they were asked for. The problem that they've generated is worse than the problem they were sent to solve. We are not against traffic calming, of course not. It is simply that there is a better way. Heavy vehicles on roads within an area of slopes instability with NZTA agreement, with NZTA agreement, are deemed especially unsuitable in Bisley Moana, as have already been detailed, and now the buses. The bus service, we asked for a return to the smaller, more suitable vehicles that offer a community stop-on-demand service. It worked beautifully before. In all the time that the buses have been used, there has not been one report of more than 6 passengers aboard at any time. It's worth noting that some of the, okay, well, it's not worth noting at the moment. Time is of the essence. Signage. We ask for permanent no-through heavy traffic signage top and bottom of Bisley Ave. It's a 40,000-year-old slip zone and it's still moving. It's no place for heavy vehicles. And the houses are showing the wear and tear of it. And we need those signs because when we have a detour situation, the heavy vehicles are coming up as well. And staff at the top and bottom cannot enforce a no-go without proper permanent signs. So we ask that there be no through traffic signs going up Bisley and Moana Ave. Speed limits. Can we reduce the speed limits down to 45 or even 30 kilometres an hour through there? But the real good one, the real zinger, the best suggestion of all is speed cameras. All around the world, they use speed cameras and they're an income stream. This is an opportunity for council to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Whilst there is a financial outlay, there is mitigating income. We understand that NZTA has paid for some signals and traffic lights in the past, so it is possible to obtain funding. Cameras are a significant globally proven deterrent through fines and occasional policing. In fact, the warning signs traffic cameras in this area are a better deterrent than the speed bumps themselves. And here's the real kicker. This is an opportunity for abuser to pay. Abuser pays. Automatic flash, poof, instant $200 fine. That's how you manage and ameliorate traffic behaviour. The democratic process has been followed for residents. We ran our own survey. We had a 56-to-1 request to remove the speed bumps, not because they're the speed bumps, but because of the impact they're having with heavy vehicles. 56-to-1 in voting for removal. I understand the council has run their own form of survey and they come up with a 3-to-1 vote to remove the speed bumps. It's a pretty heavy voice from the community about what to do with them. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any questions from colleagues? We've got a couple of minutes. Councillor Kirby.
Kia ora, Jeremy. Nice to see you again. Thank you for presenting to us today. I had a few questions. So during my campaign, I was quite interested in this topic, thanks to your advocacy on the campaign trail.
Yep.
And I door knocked the entire area, the streets above and around it. You know, they were a polarising one, pretty mixed results, but everyone I spoke to that said they didn't like them did acknowledge they worked, and no one could really suggest any alternatives. So I'm interested with some of your suggestions today. Also just want to push back on the buses a bit because a lot of people did really love them. I noticed quite a few of the houses right in the slump zone where you live were also Airbnbs. So I just do wonder if those residents are actually living here when they're filling out those surveys. My question, where I'm arriving at, You've talked about evidence, wear and tear on people's vehicles and homes. Do you have any evidence of that? When I was door knocking, I asked everyone and no one was actually able to point to a single piece of evidence that showed there was wear and tear.
I must
Quite a
have
few.
vocal neighbours.
Quite a few questions there.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's give Jeremy
The
opportunity to
evidence is
answer those.
shower doors rattling, pictures moving out on the wall, cracks appearing in foundations and paths around the house. And say again? Yeah, I can certainly supply photos. Yeah, definitely there. And it's not every house. You're right. Not every house is rattling and rolling, but the ones that are, and it's every 20 minutes. Some have put in, and it's the revving up and calming down again. And of course, we all take evasive action around to get through those, the speed bumps I'm talking about, they're patched so that the buses are supposed to roll over them. But of course, residents can't shoot the gap between them. It does impact on the houses. Stuff, things rattling on mantelpieces, that sort of thing, and it's regular. You can set your clock by it. Yeah. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
Question from Councillor Austin.
Hey, Jeremy.
Hi.
Yeah, so I've got two questions, but well, first off, actually, I have sat in one of the houses and heard for myself the sound and the rattles from those buses, and it is really, really disturbing. And another thing is your signage that you want to put at the bottom of Rocks Road, is it for just for heavy vehicles or is it for all vehicles? For
heavy vehicles, we have concrete mixers going up there because, of course, they're trying to get to Tasman Heights. Concrete mixers. There's even the lift and shift crane goes up there. There are other ways of getting up to the top of Tasman Heights and Princes Drive, Clarence Drive now, and also Princes Drive. But to come up through Bisley Moana, it's the heavy freight that's doing the business. That's really the problem.
Thank you for clarifying that. I just wanted to know between those two. Thanks, Jeremy. That's great.
We are over on time. Jeremy,
Righto.
thank you for your presentation this morning. We do understand that there are strong passions amongst the Tahunanui Hills resident.
Yeah, well, you don't worry
Albeit
about
like
strong
on-
passions. You want cool cucumbers.
All right. Good on you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
again
much,
for
everyone.
making the
Appreciate
time
your
this
time. All the best.
We come to the next item on the agenda, which is the confirmation of our minutes for the first meeting of the year on the 12th of February. Does any colleague have any concerns about those minutes? Councillor Courtney is indicating he's happy to move the adoption of those minutes. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Skinner. If there is no discussion, I shall put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, say no. I come to the Mayor's report, of which I comment on 4 issues. I'll just make some oral comments about the report, then I'd be happy to take questions. There are no decisions, so I would like to try and keep the time frame on my Mayor's report relatively short, given the significant agenda we have today. Firstly, housing has been a massive issue for our community. I have to say to you, for the first time in decades, I feel that we're getting on top of it. I look significantly, it's not one of those issues where there's a single magic bullet. You need to do a whole lot of stuff. In the last fortnight, with a number of council colleagues, I've been at the opening of 3 new significant community projects, which is a tribute to our council staff and our former housing task force that really worked hard to accelerate and get those built, and there are lots more to open. A total of over 100 community houses, and I checked the record, there has not been a year in which we've done more than 20. To have 100 underway is a real game changer. Secondly, that very significant investment by Kāinga Ora, we've got 91 houses of their projects. The one that I'm still in the balance is the Examiner Street, and it is my intention to keep the heat on government to honour the memorandum of understanding when we sold the property in Examiner Street for them to redevelop that. That is alongside the Housing First program, of which I compliment the work of the Salvation Army, the work of the mail room, and the most recent contract that our staff have concluded with the Women's Room. And that's about those active programs to work right alongside our homeless and try and facilitate them into stable housing. I think the headline in the Nelson Mail earlier this week about the issues of P and interrelated reminds us how complex that issue is. And it is my view that overall, with particularly the homeless issue in the central city, we do need to approach it with a soft heart, but also a firm head in keeping our city safe. Like I say, I want to acknowledge all of those, both council and others, that have enabled us to make that progress on housing. There has been significant progress over the last month on what is the most important infrastructure project for our city, and that is the redevelopment of Nelson Hospital. I joined with the Health Minister in turning the first sod on the 28-bed temporary inpatient unit. The far more significant project is the new 6-storey inpatient building, of which will be an investment in our city. In my view, it'll be the largest building project our city has had to date. It will be hundreds of millions of dollars. Our council staff are working closely with Health New Zealand. They presented to the Urban Design Panel. I think they will be in the position next month to be able to share with the public the detailed design. The particular issues of which I have been doing work on is around the helipad, which is important both from a residence impact point of view, but also for an isolated region like us, the transport to and from the hospital is very important. And also there is the issues of parking. I am concerned both about the parking issues at the hospital when it's completed, but I also think we've got some really challenging issues. I suspect there will be over 200 utes on contractors during the peak construction by about 2 years' time, and how we manage that in a functional hospital is going to require a good working relationship. I am encouraged that Health New Zealand is indicating a new parking building in the early stages of the project. I'll continue to keep council updated on the progress of that project. And I want to reassure both the community and council that by myself and Nigel's staff are working as closely as we can with Health New Zealand to get a really good outcome for our city. The third issue in my report relates to Plan Change 30 and the runway extension. Look, these infrastructure projects are really hard. They do impact on people. But the part that I'm actually really proud of our community is that rather than the huge expense, and I say hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I don't mind whether it's ratepayer money or airport company money or golf club money, Te Hunanui Beach money or Te Hunanui Beach Association, it's all our community's money. And the fact that there has been sufficient goodwill for all of those three organisations to come to an out-of-court settlement on the appeals is actually a really good outcome for our community. And if you look internationally at runway extensions, these things can often be dragged out in the courts for years. And so I want to put on record, on behalf of the council, my thanks to the airport company and particularly its chief executive, who I think has worked really hard to change the relationships with the community that were quite rocky. And each of those organisations, the golf club, the Te Hunanui Holiday Park and the Community Association, for the goodwill that they have shown in getting an outcome of which I think is good for the community. Yes, there are still going to be some difficult decisions ahead, as for instance, the golf club works with the Public Works Act and those things, and we need to stay engaged. But the part that's really encouraging for me is those relationships are the best that I have seen in years, and that is a good foundation for moving that project forward. The last item in my mayor's report is with respect to the government's resource management reforms. These are truly huge, and I know we've got budget pressures, I'd say to the chief executive, but the delivery of the new spatial plan, the new land use plan, and the new natural environment plan will be one of the most challenging issues for this council over the next 3 years. I note that under the RMA, it took 8 years from 1996 to 2004. We all got a feel through Plan Change 29 about how complex and difficult these issues are. We're talking about the rules that are going to impact on over 24,000 titles of land worth over $23 billion. And you only need to get one of those wrong to really adverse affect a person's property. Now, I was encouraged by the hearing that I got on Monday. I am hopeful that a clause will be included in the reported back bill that has Nelson and Tasman develop a single plan. But I still remain very nervous that there isn't the full appreciation from government about how big a job it is for councils and how much it is going to cost to deliver those plans. I do have a very strong view, and that is for both Nelson ratepayers and Tasman ratepayers. We can do that job far more cost effectively if we do it together. I'm more than happy to take any questions on the 4 issues in my mayor's report. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mayor Nick. I have a question, but just before I do, I just say how delighted I am, and I know everyone around this table will be, with those figures that you're quoting regarding housing. Because housing is such a basic need for individuals and families in this community. It brings security, and it makes our whole living here in Nelson much more pleasant, stable. So I'm terribly grateful to all those developers, Kainga Ora, Tasman Housing, Nelson Tasman Housing Trust, Salvation Army, and all of those people. Mayor Nick, what I really want to know now is, and if you can't answer it, I'm prepared to take it on notice, but what amount of funds do remain in that pool that we've developed of finance and of money to support some of these developments? We sold our pensioner houses, 141 of them, I think it was, and we came out with a pool of 12 million. How much money remains there now? And is it turning over as we hoped it would?
Good question. You're correct. When the council agreed to sell its 142 pensioner cottages, we received $12 million. The basis of the sale was that we would commit that $12 million to housing, and initiatives like we've done with the Women's Centre, with the mailroom, as well as supporting community housing providers, come from that funds. That $12 million is effectively all committed to this extent. We have got some projects that may not proceed. And so there may be some, depending on whether, and there are agreements in place. The reason I'm not going to mention them is some of them are confidential, is that it is not sure that all of those will proceed. In the event they don't proceed, my view is I want houses built, not money in the bank. And so if we are notified of that, what you rightly identify is that we have largely used that fund to accelerate the provision of housing. When we get to the LTP, we'll have decisions to go from there. The one encouraging figure that I have, and look, governments of both political persuasions have put huge amounts of energy in trying to get on top of this problem. I was hugely encouraged, as I noted in my report, and it's a first this century. So think about how young James and Campbell would have been at the last time rents went up slower than inflation. In the last year, rents in this city went up by 1.3% as compared with inflation of 3.1%. We have had over a decade many double-digit increases in rents. That to me is a real turnaround. When we get into the LTP, we'll have to make an assessment of it. The main instrument that we have left in our toolbox for assisting the community and our housing sector is where we waive development contributions. That is not a free lunch, in the sense that if you're waiving it for one development, you're effectively putting that cost. That will be a strategic decision that I'll be wanting to look at the housing data late this year, early next year, to see whether those positive trends are still there and whether we wish through the LTP to make a further initiative in the housing area. Councillor Rowland.
Thanks, Mayor Nick. And just a couple of questions on two topics. And I just want to start, and it may be a question for the Chief Executive rather than yourself, but regarding the hospital project, which is exciting to see that underway. I'm just wondering, with consenting requirements that the hospital will need to go through in the next couple of years, have we got enough resource within the current council operations to not have any delays in that project getting underway? I think as much as we need the hospital and the health board to be doing their work, I think we owe the community due diligence as well to make sure we're fully prepared for that work to happen.
I'm going to hand that to the Chief.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Councillor Rowell. Yeah, absolutely. So look, we've been planning for this for years. We've been talking to Tasman. We've been talking about how we allocate resource between the two councils and where we build up expertise. And Mandy and the team have certainly built up the expertise. They've got an exceptionally good relationship with the hospital around that consenting process. We of course brought in that temporary ward from Australia, and we made sure that we didn't hold anything up there. So I've made a commitment to this community that we as a council do not slow anything down. We've been pushing the government to speed things up. I had a conversation yesterday at the KEG, which is the emergency management system, and we were talking to the hospital and around the helo on the roof of the hospital, and of course we've had to consent that, whether it's IL3, IL4. So look, we've got a really good understanding of their needs. Mandy and the team have made sure that they are talking to them all the time, and I've only heard reports from the hospital team that my staff have been fantastic in supporting the development.
The meeting I had with the Minister and senior officials were very complimentary of the council staff in their work around both the resource consenting. One of the key things will be whether it is a notified or non-notified consent for that large 6-storey inpatient building. That will partly depend on where it's located and what those height and site limits. And my understanding is that that design work is still being done. I would expect we'll be in a position about April, May to know where that's up to.
Very good. Can I just ask one more question regarding Plan Change 30 and congratulate the Community Association and other stakeholders and being able to work in a positive way with mainly the Chief Executive, Brendan Cook, down at the Nelson Airport and the work that they've done there. And I just wonder that when this process went out to the community right at the start, I think we, even as councillors of the day, looked at the plan change work in a lot of detail that was at times difficult to understand. And there's obviously been some positive responses through mediation that now will be not happening within this plan change. And I just wonder that once we have in a position to sign this off officially as a council, if we can provide the community with some detail on what's actually changed in a nice, clear, understanding way, because at the moment everyone knows that, well, it's good that the thing's signed off, but no one actually knows what real changes have happened. And I'm aware that there's some significant ones that I would call wins for the community, and just wonder as a council, can we make sure that we're here to help share that story for what they've advocated for?
I think that's a very fair response. There will be a report coming through from our officers, of which we make the decision about when the plan change will take effect. Anybody who's anything to do with resource management rules know how cumbersome they sound. And so the invitation to our Chief Executive and staff is, when that report comes through, can we in plain language describe the changes, as much for our benefit but also for the community. So that's a good point, Councillor Rowell.
We can certainly commit to doing that. I think one of the key messages is also this is not happening overnight. In fact, this is not. In fact, I had a lunch with Brendan yesterday from the airport, and it's clear that this is a long-term planning project, and before anything happens, the community, and we will make sure that everybody understands what the impacts are. But it's great to see we've got a broad agreement around the whole community.
If there are no further questions, there is no resolution flowing from my Mayor's report. We will move to the new item on the agenda, which is the traffic calming trial. I'd invite Lyndon and David before the committee to present their report. I have been notified of an amendment from Councillor Rowell and Courtney. I think my preferred, and I've given it a bit of thought, what's the easiest way to handle this? My thoughts was to allow effectively their resolution to be moved and seconded and debated. when we get to the stage of after the questions. And then in the event that that resolution is lost, then we will move back to the resolution that has been recommended by officers. Let's firstly hear from our officers on their report, then we'll take questions, and then we'll move into debate on the resolutions. Welcome.
Good morning. Through the chair, yes. So my name's David Light. I am the manager of asset planning. Lyndon here will be talking through this report, and Lyndon is the manager of transport asset management.
Through the chair, the manager of transport strategy and planning. So the report's been provided. We've got two documents there. We've got our cover report, and then we've got our background assessment report. So just to take you through the high points and the key points. So in January and February 2024, speed cushions were installed on Bisley Avenue at 4 sites, 5 sites at Moana, and speed humps and a speed table installed on Princes Drive as part of a trial under the Land Transport Street Layouts Rule. They were primarily to reduce traffic crashes and speeds, but also to reduce traffic running through these streets to avoid congestion on the state highway. The trial has come to an end, and it appears to have delivered against the objectives, with crash frequency and severity reduced, mean operating speeds down, and traffic volumes lower across the corridor. There were 10 crashes in the 5-year period for Bisley Ave, 2 crashes, but only 2 crashes in the past 2 years. There's been a considerable reduction in the 85th percentile speed on Princes Drive from 60 down to 50, with the average speed, which was around 50 kilometres per hour, down to 42. However, people don't like them, particularly in the Moana and Bisley area, with 63% of those local survey respondents opposed to the speed cushions being made permanent. The most vocal support for the removal was in Bisley and Moana Avenues, and the removal was first raised by those who live adjacent to the speed cushions, who were concerned about the noise and the vibrations, primarily from buses crossing those cushions. The feedback was widened to cover areas of noise from heavy vehicles and trade vehicles with trailers, vibrations, safety, wear and tear on vehicles, and emissions. Many suggested lower speed limits with camera enforcement, but we don't consider that these are viable options to address the issue. Some Moana and Bisley respondents noted there was no longer a problem with boy racers at night, and they were able to access their properties much easier with the lower speeds in the environment. So the removal of the cushions was estimated to cost around 70,000 and is currently unbudgeted. And the officer's recommendation was that the council approve making the speed humps on Princes Drive and the speed cushions on Moana Bisley permanent.
I didn't quite hear you, so I'm sorry. What was the amount? You said a number, and I just want to know what that number was.
Our estimate for the removal of the cushions is around 70,000.
70,000. Thank you. I thought it was 7, and I had heard 70 earlier. I wish we all wish it was. Okay. Any questions? Pete, then Matty.
Thanks for the report. Just a few questions, in particular regarding the buses, I guess. We have some diesel buses in our fleet, correct? Like a couple of them. And do they use that route?
So our primary driver through the chair is the use of the electric bus fleet for our metro services. There are some diesel buses which run some of the outer circuits, but
but they wouldn't be using that route.
No,
because one of the comments from one of our presenters this morning was of the revving up of the buses, which can't be.
Yeah, so we don't have diesel buses running those routes. We run the electrics. When there was a period where there was significant roadworks in the brook, we did put a couple of the smaller buses on the route, but those buses are no longer available to us through SBL.
Right, so I'm presuming that the electric buses don't make any noise from their electric engines in regards to the issue of going over the speed cushions?
Through the chair, no.
So why is there vibration? Are they going at such a speed that they're actually lifting the whole suspension off the ground and thumping back down on the ground?
Through the chair, that's not my experience of them. Generally, they manage through there, but I think it's that vertical displacement of the buses over the cushions. So even though they're designed to enable the buses to straddle, they are riding over the edge. So it is that over the hump that they are concerned about.
And I noticed that there was a speed cushion at the airport that was altered to take into account the buses that, you know, had a smoother entry and exit. Can you comment on that? Has that been successful? It's obviously successful when you drive your car over because you hardly feel it.
So I'm not aware of that, but I assume it's similar to the speed tables that were installed in Tasman as part of. We have some tables on the bus route there, and they've taken the approach of a reasonably sharp rise onto the ramp, quite a tapered exit off the ramp.
Right.
And the feedback has been that they are less disruptive. While they're still effective as speed cushions, they're less disruptive overall. But they would be more disruptive than the cushions, which has been designed to minimise that aspect.
Thanks, Lynn. Subsequent question then. So you mentioned that there had been some discussion about driver training. Presumably the buses could go slow enough not to cause any of this to be happening. Over the speed cushions.
Yes, and we've continually have those conversations with the bus company, and our feedback from them, because the buses are electronically monitored, and the feedback is that those drivers are slowing for those cushions in general.
Okay, thank you.
I've got Matty, then myself, then Kahu.
Thank you, through the Mayor. So 70,000 to remove. I'm wondering, is there a cost, additional cost? I know we're going to be reselling anyway, as far as doing the reselling and making the humps permanent?
Yes, so through the chair, so we've recently done an asphalt replacement in the lower section. That was coming up and approaching one of the cushions. And our solution there, given we were presenting to council on this, was to actually stop that asphalt replacement prior to the cushion. If we were to completely replace that section, we would have needed to lift the cushion and reinstall it. It's not an area which needs to be done immediately, so that's not a cost to us. Across the rest of the route, while it has been asphalt, we are resealing that with chip seal. And in those instances, we are able to chip seal up to the cushion and then recommence on the other side. So there's not the maintenance aspect as if we were completely replacing the asphalt concrete in those areas where we would have to fully remove the cushions and putting them in. But the way we're addressing that now means that that's much less of an issue.
My question, Lyndon, is trying to decipher the survey, and that is the anecdotal information I've had is very strong and passionate views from those on Moana and Bisley. But actually, I've had very little pushback from people on Princess Drive. Is there any way I can decipher either from officers' perceptions or from the survey as to whether my instinctive view about the two different areas is correct?
So we should be able to, in the regional survey, where they've identified, with the local survey where they've identified their address, which not everyone has, be able to pull that. We haven't separated that as yet, but we could certainly do that. But the sense and the feedback has been very much that the most vocal feedback has been in the Moana and Bisley area. And it's much more supportive in the Princes Drive area. And we've actually had requests for additional locations in Princes Drive. So, yeah.
In the record of complaints, this community has had trouble with boy racers.
Yeah.
I'm very aware of the boy racer challenges on Princess Drive. To my knowledge, I haven't had any complaints about the boy racers on Moana and Bisley, and I suspect because it's not straight and flat and they can't get up to speed is why. Do you know whether we have had problems with boy racers on the Moana Bisley stretch?
Through the chair, yes, and my sense is that I've had more feedback about boy racers in Moana Bisley than I've had on Princes. And when Rohan and I met local residents, he made the comment that it's a well-known boy racer route. And it was quite common to do time trials to see how quickly you could drive to the top of the hill and turn around and come back again. So historically, my sense is it's more pronounced on that route than it is on Princes Drive.
You know those signs that we have in a number of locations, for instance, adjacent to my home, we had quite a series of accidents and speeding problems where you come along Main Road Stoke alongside my home. And council installed a sign that tells you your speed before you approach the curve. In the period before that went in, we had an accident every year. Since had none. What is the decision-making process in the budget around those signs that indicate to drivers their speed?
So they're an information sign, so it is only advice. It does provide that driver feedback. My understanding is that we have a couple of those signs and we rotate them around a number of sites through the area. So that is a mechanism that we can employ. But I think generally those people that understand the speed limit and perhaps notice when they get that feedback that they're going fast will respond to that. I don't think that response will go to all the people we will be targeting.
My last question, I was surprised in the report in paragraph, let me find it. 8.4, that prior to the speed humps being installed, the community survey was 14 against and 13 for. Why did we proceed with installing them when our own survey at that time indicated that the community was opposed?
Through the chair, I wasn't actually here at the time, so I don't know why that decision was made. My understanding was that the decision to do the install was made, and then the survey was put in place to say, well, we've made this decision. What's your feedback on it? So that was during the install process that was made.
Thank you, Matthew. Sorry, Ko.
Go away. I'll just make a quick note of I think all vehicles are actually equipped with speedos, so anyone going down there knows how fast they're going. And also, I know from experience that the speed camera that when they're on a known route sometimes can be like a challenge thing to see how fast you go through the gate, and not necessarily an instrument that slows anybody down. I think that from the report for the public forum, it was quite interesting hearing a positive bit of feedback that the buses are running regular and that you can put your watch to it. So if there's any win out of it, it's probably that. So one of the claims that was made, and this is really an engineering related question, and that is the relationship between the claims that were made about damage to property. I think there were suggestions of cracks in houses and foundations being affected. Have we got, what is the view from the officers about that? Because that's quite a substantial claim, but we were provided with pretty much no evidence, and it just seems to be a bit anecdotal. And my house is nowhere near a bus, speed bump, highway, trucks or anything, and it's got cracks all through it. So can I make a claim with that too, maybe?
Through the chair, perhaps 2 points. So with the speed feedback signs, they now have a cut-off for that very reason. So you don't get feedback your speed. If
that's actually the goal.
Horrendously high to make it cut off. Okay.
Yep.
We'll note that for future reference. And as far as the evidence being provided as far as cracks to home and that, I have not received anything.
Okay. And so there's nothing on that we can actually have a correlation between the effects that the buses are having and damage to property?
There's nothing along those lines that's come through.
If someone, sorry, through the chair, if they could provide evidence of that, would we have an opportunity to be able to sort of review that?
So our process in that instance would be to work through their insurers if there was indeed something that council was liable for in that context.
I would, from the construction point of view, I would find it very difficult actually to make that connection. So the other question, I think my colleague Councillor Kirby over here mentioned that that there's, when she was doing the walking around, there's quite a few Airbnbs around the property. How many of the respondents that just on the surface are actually owner occupiers of the properties in that space, and proportion of that don't actually live there but have investments in that?
And through the chair, that's not something that we've got information on.
So when you did the door knocking, who were you speaking to?
So
with Rohan and
so in November 2025, we arranged a community meeting, and that was held in the just on one of the bends. There's quite a large park area, and so people attended there. So they were just local residents who walked down.
So it wasn't actually going in.
It wasn't a door knock door. We'd had some inquiries, and as a result of that, there was an email list of about 5 key residents, and there were about 20 people that showed up at the meeting. So it was very much a community meeting.
Well, thank you.
And that meeting expressed a whole range of views on this issue.
Can I just confirm, Lyndon, my understanding is that in terms of information about the residents, we did the pre-survey before they were installed, and you've reported on that. There was the public meeting with the former or residents meeting that you've just spoken to with Rohan. There was then the petition that was presented to myself, and then there's the independently conducted survey by the council itself, and that there's those 4 different aspects of engagement with the community. Have I understood that correctly?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. And in that central portion, we've also looked at service requests and those sorts of things. So there was
extra service request
a general in that central period, and that included the period where we received the petition. And then the final survey itself was done in 2 components.
Yeah.
We did a letter drop through that neighbourhood of a paper document, and then that also went more broadly on Shade Nelson, and that was the broader views that are shown in the report. And there's nothing in there to perhaps prevent people providing feedback across all of those mechanisms.
Okay. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you. Just with that whole road section, what would you call it? Is it a collector road or a sort of arterial or a?
So Moana Bisley is a collector, yes.
it's quite an important, I mean, I see it quite an important road for getting from A to B, especially if Rocks Road is closed for any period of time or other access ways are closed. It's been an important route from getting to A to B, not just for those who live on it, but for those getting from one side of town to the other. Would that be correct?
Through the chair, yes. We do have limited sort of, I call them east-west connections from that side of the hill through between Rocks Road, Waimea. So it does perform an important function.
And would it also be a road that's important not solely for those who live along it, but for the greater Nelson area from getting to A to B across town? A very important road that we would need to keep functioning and accessible and comfortably through as possible. Would that be correct?
Through the chair, yes.
So what we are doing and have been doing with the road may serve a small purpose, but really has an impact on the greater Nelson transport if we make it difficult with speed humps or others or restrictive in any way. Would that be correct?
Through the chair, I think it's really about a balance of encouraging those two primary routes to be used as much as possible.
Yep.
But creating an environment where that route can be used when it's required in those other situations.
And
to continue to enable it to use as that local connector for those other streets and properties that run off those roads.
So I might be sort of labouring on the point, but it's a road which is very important for the greater Nelson area, and that we should be, in my view, and I think, and maybe in greater view, and maybe not all, but that we make that road as accessible and of ease and comfortable as possible. Would that be correct?
Through the chair, yes, but I'd add safe to that as well.
Thank you. Questions finished.
Councillor Rollo, then Councillor Stallard.
Thanks, Mayor Nick, and more a question probably for the Chief Executive. And it's regarding the fact that we've got in the report there that we haven't, despite this being a trial, we haven't actually got budget for any stage of removal of said trial. And I just wonder, is that common practice for this council to undertake trials without fully budgeting success or non-success when they get to the completion of their trial? I feel it's unfair to ask the officer, so I'll ask the top man himself.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Rolla. Look, I don't think that's an unfair question. If you set up a trial, then you should be able to undo the trial. Look, I think there had been a view that staff were putting in these trials and doing it without probably the right level of governance oversight. I think these traffic calming measures, bike lanes, bus lanes, and these evoke huge passions and emotions in the public one way or another. Some people love them, some people hate them, and I get that. But, you know, so in Wellington and Auckland, I've certainly seen a lot of passion around that, a lot of commentary, and certainly in Mapua where I live, there was a lot of passion around this, some calming measures there. So look, when I first started, I spoke to Alec, my Deputy Chief Executive, and Chief Engineer, and talked about, before we do any more of these things, I want to make sure that there's appropriate oversight. So and we heard from Jeremy Matthews this morning, he did say the community asked for these things. So we can talk about, you know, they asked for it because there was all the buoy races and the things. So there's a problem to be solved. They asked for it. We've put the bumps in a trial. I asked my staff to play a straight bat here and say, just give the facts. Just say what's happened. I'm not, you know, and they're quite clear that basically the trial has succeeded, and their advice is that we should keep them. Having said that, as I say, there's a lot of emotion. I do believe this is a political decision as to whether they should stay or whether they should go, and you need to weigh that up because you're the community representatives and you've got your ear on the ground talking to the public, and you hear that day in, day out. And it's so, my staff have presented the facts, they've given a recommendation, and as to where you go is up to you. But I do accept the challenge, and then you're entirely right that if we put a trial in place, we should have the ability to remove it and have put the funding in for that. So that wasn't the case when this went in some years ago. But certainly Alec would not be putting any of these trials in place in future without the A, appropriate governance oversight, and B, funding to remove the trial should it be required.
Thank you. Councillor Rollo, any further question? Councillor Stallard?
Thanks, Mayor Nick, and thanks Lyndon and David for a really comprehensive report. Full of data, and almost all of the data on commentary and so on is around attitudes to the speed cushions and the calming. Do we have equivalent data forgetting about traffic calming the road beforehand? What do people think about the road without any traffic calming in terms of speed and congestion and boy racer behaviour? Because if we support this amendment and spend money to reverse that, are we going to give rise to a lot of people saying, oh, great, we're back to square one with excessive speed, 30% higher traffic volumes, rat run and so on. So do we have data on the community's values and attitudes towards the status quo?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of particular data for this area exclusively on this issue, no.
I've just got one last question, and that is, how was the original cost of putting the speed bumps and the speed cushions on Princess Moana and Bisley paid for? I did flag this with Nikki. Was that money in the LTP, or how was it funded back in 22, 23, I think it was?
So through the chair, my understanding was that it was funded under traffic calming to support speed reduction. So that was the heading it went under. It would have been funded out of our MIDA Works program. And the cost of the work was around $125,000.
I'm trying to tease out, was it ratepayer or government money? The government at the time had quite a strong push for such measures.
So my expectation is that this would have been co-funded by NZTA at our standard bar rate.
That's my limited understanding. It's a shame that Alex not here today. He's enjoying the Melbourne races. But I think he would have given us that detail. I understand it was 50-50 funding.
Yeah.
I would like to say as Chief Executive, as we make this decision, funding is a big issue. Not in the fact of removing the humps, but if you remove the humps and the safety issues that they provide, there is no money in the annual plan, and would have to address it in the long-term plan. If we take them away, we're not going to be able to put in some sort of road calming measures. Alec was really clear to me about this before he left. We have no plan for road calming measures, and they would be very expensive, and indeed they wouldn't work for the buses, etc., etc. So that is a big. In other words, if you take them away and the boy races come back and the public come back and say, okay, what do you want to do now? I have no funding for that. And that would be an LTP issue. And to fund that in the LTP, something else would have to give. And that's quite a significant thing for you to weigh up as you make your decision.
Thanks, Chief Executive. Councillor Hodgson, last question. Then my intention is to take a break and come back to enable the debate.
Cool. Just with Councillor Rollo's amendment, with your read of that, roughly, when would we see the speed cushions removed? And the cost quoted, if we were to remove them without waiting for the next road sealing season, was about $70,000. Would we see that cost come down with this amendment?
Through the chair, our sealing crews are basically committed to the end of this season. So we would look at them doing this work prior to starting on our broader program next financial year. And that was, the cost was based on that type of arrangement. If we could get a different delivery organisation to try and make that happen more quickly, but that would add additional cost rather than reducing the cost from what we've put forward.
Just a quick sup on Councillor Hodgson's question. Your report says, look, there's two options here and both are viable, to keep and remove. If we are to remove, is doing the next road sealing season the most practical way to deliver? You're the delivery guys. Is what's in that amendment practical?
So through the chair, I would expect us to be doing this around October time to get it done at the very beginning of the sealing season, which typically runs from October, November through to about April. So it'd be the first cab off the rank who just get in and get that removed.
if we did make a decision to remove, do you have an alternative wording would you prefer, or is actually saying we're doing in the next road sealing season the most practical way for you guys to deliver?
So in terms of the statement up there, I have no particular issues with it. I think just the expectation is it would be around probably October time when it would happen. As long as people are aware of that, that's when it would be.
Thank you. Look, my intention is to end the questions. Thank our officers for the work they've done. Look, this is a relatively small issue in the big picture. You guys deliver tens of millions of dollars of infrastructure, and we don't want to be distracted by a relatively small issue, but thank the way in which you have presented the report and given us options on the way forward. My intention is to adjourn council. We will resume at 10:23 just for a quick 5-minute stretch the legs and coffee. Thank you. there are different views around the council table, and that's entirely appropriate. So I could just tell by the questions in that. So my intention is just to have a orderly and considered, respectful debate on the two viable options that the officers have presented. My understanding, Campbell Rollo, is that you wish to move the resolution that you had circulated last evening.
Yes, correct. And I believe councillor Courtney is going to
Is councillor Courtney happy to second that resolution? So the floor is open for the debate and it begins with the mover. The floor is Campbell Rollos.
Thanks, Mayor Nick, and just noting that I've got some pre-prepared notes here as well. And so I take thanks to councillor Courtney in supporting this motion with me today as the Port Hills liaison councillor that councillor Courtney is. And I do apologise to councillors for the lateness in which they received this amendment last evening. I do expect in the future, if I propose these, to have them to you at an earlier time, so apologise for that. Look, I take great delight in moving this amendment today, and I simply refer to paragraph 29 of the officer's report that simply states that this is a viable alternative to keeping them long term. I'm influenced today by moving this motion in paragraph 8.21, where a clear majority of residents in the Nelson's Council's survey support removing them by 63% to 18. It's clear that we need to listen to the community on this matter. The removal of speed cushions does require digging out and resealing, and so it needs to be done in the correct season, and that's why I'm also proposing today that we do delay this until October when the road sealing season starts. I note that this does not need to be rushed, as we have heard from residents and other community members. I have seen for myself houses that have been affected by this, and I believe it's their personal responsibility that if they wish to raise this with council, they can do so freely. It does not require us to go looking. In the event where we don't budget for a trial, it simply doesn't make sense. If you're going to go and trial something, you should be budgeting for a success or failure. And that's something that we need to take a hard look at ourselves as governors as we approach the long-term plan. Now, it was noted by the Chief Executive, and I will take this time to debate him, where he noted that we don't currently have any safety plans in the annual plan and looking forward to the long-term plan. And I take note that as we move this motion today, the removal of these speed cushions won't happen until the end of the year. Ironically, at the same time, we're looking at our long-term plan for the next 10 years, where we can take great consideration to alternative safety measures, not just in this area, but in fact the whole of the Nelson region. And so I note that as we prepare for the next 10 years, we as councillors absolutely will have safety at the forefront of the decisions we make for this community. I had the privilege of house sitting on Moana Ave for 6 months soon after these speed cushions went in. In fact, it was quite ironic because I was sitting at Saxton Oval watching a game of cricket where I received a phone call from the person I was about to go house sitting from saying, "What is all this asphalt that's getting dumped outside my house?" And I quickly responded by saying, "I have no idea." That is how the communication leading into this was. Not everyone was aware, and not everyone knew how long it was going to last. In this time of house sitting on that, I note that I witness bikers flying down the middle of the road as rubbish trucks and buses come either side of them. I even got to talk to one of these bike riders, and I said, "Why are you doing this?" And he said, "That is the safest way to get down Moana Ave at the moment." I looked at this gentleman and I said, "Well, actually, you're more of a risk to anyone than you are the cars either side of you." Mayor Nick and councillors, this amendment today is a simple response to our own survey data, which provides that the community is not fully supportive of this trial. It doesn't mean that this trial has been a failure. It simply means that it should have only been a trial, and we need to look for alternative safety solutions in this Moana, Bisley Ave, and the entire Nelson region. And I'm happy to move this amendment. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rollo. Councillor Courtney, do you wish to take the call now? You can do so at any time.
Thank you, Nick. Yes, I'd be happy to take it now if you wouldn't mind. Yes, I'm happy to second Councillor Rollo's alternative resolution to the recommendation that's actually in the agenda. It's 6.2 on the 2-year traffic calming trial. I'm pleased to hear Councillor Rollo say that if the resolution goes through, the speed cushions would be removed later this year. Not tomorrow, not the next day or next month, but later this year when the road sealing season starts. And that to me might get more competitive as the year passes and prices much more keener. Now that's good news, because I have to say that I still reel from the price of 70,000 to remove the speed cushions. That to me is extraordinary, and I have certainly no recollection at all of the cost of removal being mentioned to us when these cushions were installed. So I'm hopeful, very hopeful, that better pricing on the reseal might help defray at least some of that expense. Mayor Nick, this item right here, right now, is democracy at its best, democracy in action. We asked our residents what they thought about the speed cushions. 63% said they wanted them removed. 18% said they wanted them to stay. We then turn around and ignore the results of our own survey. I think we risk some serious reputational damage as a council. You see, people expect us to listen. Expect us to listen when we ask them for their views. I also noted that the report said that the land transport rule setting speed limits does not allow us to install 40 kilometres an hour limit. That was in the report. And my question is, why not? Why are we not able to implement a lower speed limit? We've reduced speeds to 40k in parts of the Port Hills. Clearly remember that. Then when we went further, with a progressive council, and reduced speeds in the CBD to 30k, from 50k down to 30k. And then some enthusiastic councillors decided at that moment we would also reduce the speed in Selwyn Place. So it's been done before. It's not new. The community on the hills is simply asking for at least 40 kilometres an hour limit, which seems completely reasonable to me. And finally, while this 2-year trial has been running, we've had the good news of the opening of the Clarence Drive. Now that's changed things considerably. It's giving residents another route. It's taking pressure off Moana Ave and off Bisley Ave. The report also makes the point that the crashes on Moana Ave, for example, were recorded as, and I quote, low loss of control incidents on bends. Loss of control incidents on bends. So just to be clear, none of the speed cushions are on bends. I'll just make that point. So for me, that really underlines why Councillor Rollo's alternative resolution makes sense. It's practical, it's democratic, but most importantly of all, it respects both our community and our ratepayers.
The floor is the Deputy Mayor's.
I just have a question of clarification, if I could, before I make my comments. Regarding Councillor Rollo's amendment, if this is lost, do we return to the...
Correct. So my intention would be that if a majority does not support the resolution, then we come to the officer's recommendation and I'll seek a mover and seconder.
And there's no issue with direct negative or anything like that? No. Okay, cool. Okay, well, I'm happy to make my comments at this stage, and I am interested to hear what everybody has to say, so I may change my mind by the time I've heard everybody, but at this stage, I'll be opposing the amendment. Now, my rationale is this, is that the speed cushions went in due to driver behaviour. That was specifically put in and has been very successful, as has been outlined in the report, at reducing the associated issues regarding speed, reducing accidents, and making it easier for residents to access properties. So it's been a successful outcome. There's no question of that. It's been a successful outcome. The issue that we've been presented by the submitter this morning and that's been coming through the feedback from residents is also to do with driver behaviour. 100% to do with driver behaviour, and it's the bus driver's behaviour. They're approaching and leaving the speed cushions is proving to be the problem. So surely, with proper driver training and insisting that they go over those speed bumps at a speed that's not going to cause the issues, the problem should go away. Now, am I mistaken in thinking that? I don't think I am. I think it's down to that, 100%. The alternative, by taking these speed cushions out, is to return back to the bad behaviour that we don't want in the first place. That is turning this Bisley and Moana into a rat run, increasing speed, increasing the number of accidents. I don't think that is what we want to have happen. So I think it's pretty clear which way we should be voting on this.
Thank you to the Deputy Mayor. I'll take my call. First, the issue of 20 speed cushions in Moana and Bisley Avenue is not the biggest issue for our city, and we need to keep the issue in context. But I do think we as a public democratic institution need to remind ourselves of our role. And I do quote Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg speech when he said, "It is about government of the people, by the people, for the people." Now, it's a really tough call, and we've had them on something like the one-way, two-way on Bridge Street, where when we did the community service, it was really 50-50 and quite a hard call. And equally so, the last week or so, we've had debates about the trees, and I have to tell you, I've had as many tree lovers as I've had anti-tree people. But when the survey result is so compelling at, 63, more than 3 times as many people want the cushions gone. And you know what surprised me? Normally when we come to these issues of speed and speed measures, what you have is the local residents really wanting the low speeds and these bumps in place, and it's the motorists going through it. We've got this real juggle between the two of them. Here we have the local community saying, no, we don't like them. Now, when our staff say to us that, Nick, hey, look, you need a 400mm diameter pipe to be able to cope with flood flows, I don't care what the public think. That's a technical issue of which the advice is important. But I'm sorry, these are very esoteric issues of a different weighing of elements, of which it's appropriate, as the officers have done, have said that there is more than one viable option. Now, on the issue of speed that Pete's covered, let me tell you why I've got a different view. And I draw attention to the data on page 75 of the report. On Bisley Ave and Moana Ave, prior to the installation of the speed limits, the speeds were 45, 52, 53, 53. These are the 85% percentile. In other words, 85% of drivers were driving less than that speed. The 2 roads prior to the speed bumps being picked where there was excessive speeds was on Princess Drive, and Campbell Rollio's motion does not remove them in that area. I have to say, and can I congratulate the Chief Executive on his comment about the trial. I do not think it is good governance practice to go to the community and say something's a trial, to spend the money on doing it, and then when the trial does not have community support, say, sorry, there's no money to undo it. It sort of, to me, would be like the car salesman. You buy the car from him on trial, and I return the car and he says, sorry, I haven't got the budget to buy it back off you. You've got to stick with the car. That's not the behaviour that we want as a council. And I appreciate the chief executive. Look, it's a small stake, but there should have been budget set aside for it. Here's the bigger question. What's our transport policy? Our transport policy should be to enable people to get from A to B as easily and conveniently as possible while making sure it's safe and while making sure we minimise the environmental effects. I worry that we ignore the first part. Now, we're not the only guys, the council, to have difficulty with speed bumps. Look what happened in Richmond with the speed bumps they put on Wensley Road only a couple of years ago, with huge community reaction where they had to take them off. This is an area where there has been overreach. And here's my problem with saying, oh, well, the speeds have gone down. There's some reduction in the accidents, so they must stay. I tell you, you could put speed bumps on every single road in Nelson, and you'll see a reduction in speed, and you'll see a reduction in accidents. But nobody would really seriously propose that that would be a sensible response. Now, I don't accept that there's been significant damage. I believe that Councillor Pakipaki is correct. But I do agree with the residents about the level of noise. That is real. And I don't agree that just if the bus drivers change, the concrete trucks, the other vehicles that are going down that road. And so I'm saying, look, there's a number of factors to weigh up here. The community has said no. I was particularly taken back, and it is my own experience on these roads, that they are not safer. I tell you why they're not safer. The number of times I have seen cyclists and others avoiding those speed cushions and swerving, I'm not satisfied that that indeed is making it safer. And the survey of cyclists, of walkers and drivers who use it all said they felt less safe. So I come back to the point. This is an issue of judgment. I say, reflecting on that, our duty as elected representatives is to represent democratically the people of this community. They've spoken with a very loud voice, over 400 responses to that survey. And I think it would be wrong for us to ignore that result and not take on board their clear message that the cushions on Moana and Bisley has been a trial done with the best of intent, but it's not been successful, and those speed humps should go.
Tēnei te mihi mai, kia koutou, tēnei ata. So I always get a bit frustrated when people start waving the flag of democracy and saying, you know, that's a popularist way of saying democracy is great when it agrees with what I want to achieve. One of the things that's really important about this here, I'm not actually really too stressed about, it's their neighbourhood, it's what they want. So why is it even in there? I mean, there's the factors of safety and there's the factors of what is a greater good for our community. What sort of services is this providing? My main concern is that this is a very well-to-do part of our community. This is not, you know, this is not Karaka Street. The mobilising people who can afford the time to be involved in responding to something like this and getting active around it is not something that our poorer communities can actually afford to do. So I'm just worried about the way that tail wagging the dog scenario of where we've got a competent group of sector of our community who is you know able to afford the time to even come and present to council, to go around and lobby for this to happen. And that's really concerning that we as a council jump when they had a problem to start off with. They said that they had issues around safety and the cars. And there's a bit of a latency problem there because you know, they had an issue with a problem. Now, okay, we jumped to try and solve that solution. The numbers show that that solution has addressed the problem. Now we've got another problem, so they want to go back to where they were to start off with. That's a concerning matter in terms of just spend. I'm not even thinking about, you know, whether we go for this or not. I think also for the greater good, I just got mentioned here, my councillor colleague mentioned that the rattling of trailers and those sorts of things. How inconvenient is it that the rest of our community use a road that's outside our place and make noise? How dare they, when we have other parts of our community that just simply have to put up with that? They don't live in the flash neighbourhoods. They don't have the privilege of being able to lobby us as a body here. I actually think, so step aside from that, I actually think that this needs to run its course a bit longer, and potentially the money can be found from somewhere else. But I think that for the council to snap under the banner of also with suggesting democracy, how many of the people that asking for these to be removed were the ones that asked for it to be installed in the first place? Are they two separate groups? It's going to be really hard to find out whether or not that they actually are. So, we are being wagged by the tail in this case, but I think that for the greater good of the community, these are doing what they were intended to do. I was definitely concerned about if there is a correlation, if we can make a connection to that they're damaging houses, that's a real problem. So I can't support this motion, this amendment, I guess, and I am going to vote against it.
Thank you. Other contributions? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. Can I just start by firstly commending our staff, firstly for the examples that I've seen of incredible safety improvements. I point to areas such as the Victory Square roundabout that have been exceptional pieces of work, and I want to thank our staff for that. But secondly, when these speed humps went in, they did take a number of us by surprise, and there was a bit of kickback within the organisation from councillors who, admittedly, we probably got 2 or 3 weeks notice, but we didn't have the opportunity to feed into the decision making as you would expect we would as councillors. Nigel and our staff acknowledged that there was an error there, and since then I think that things have turned around and we've seen an exceptional change. So I want to acknowledge that as well. I think it seems quite clear to me the responses from those who have spent considerable time in the area and those who maybe haven't done so. If you spend some time up there, you see what's going on and you see what the residents are concerned about. Every second car swerves around these speed humps into the parking areas. It feels unsafe. So this is my route to go down to the beach when I'm walking with my kids. And when I'm running and going up Tamaki Steps and down Piper's Reserve, this is where I go. It feels unsafe as a walker and as a runner. Cars swerve right up next to you. They slow down, they go 50, they slow right down to 5-10 kilometers an hour, and then they rapidly accelerate again. Cars drive over them with a trailer, and the car slows down. The car has suspension, has a wide enough wheelbase that it doesn't hit too hard, but it catches people out, and the trailer flies up into the air and smacks back into the ground. It's really obvious when you see it. There's a question around what works. What's the metric of whether or not this has been successful? And if we simplify it just down to slower speeds and less accidents, that's not the only metric that we can consider. You could turn the road to gravel and you would slow the speeds down. You could plant a whole forest there, and the measurement of slower speeds, you tell, has been very successful. That's not the only metric that as councillors we have to consider. It's not simple, and there are lots of variables to balance. We've spoken to the community. I think we did the right thing to not just respond quickly and take them back out when we heard a bit of dissatisfaction. We can't afford to flip-flop back and forth, but we went back to the community at the conclusion of the trial, and the response was really clear, and I think that we need to listen to that. So I'm happy to support this amendment.
Thanks, Councillor Hodgson. Next contribution is Councillor Skinner.
Thank you. I support what we have for us at the moment. Thank you for the staff and officers for their accurate responses and keeping the emotive side out of it, which they're very professional. This has been a trial. A trial is a trial. If we're going to remain the good faith of the public when we say we're going to have a trial, we should, at the end of the day, it be a trial where we continue or discontinue. Because what can happen and was happening at the beginning of this was, as council doing this sort of a preemptive softening, we're calling it trial, but actually it's a continuous permanent feature. If we hadn't have done the trial, we wouldn't have discovered the impacts, positive or negative, from it. So removing them or keeping it is not a loss at all. We got a lot of data and information on how these things work on different types of roads, and it's exactly what it's achieved. My strong take on it is that what was perceived was going to have a great gain is actually shown to be a greater negative impact from the speed humps than the gains that we were possibly expecting or hoping. Also, very clear that this is a road that serves the whole community. If we're always trying, quite rightfully, trying to keep those east-west corridors open, smooth and usable, this is a very important east-west corridor used by many. If we're also trying to keep the impact down as much as we can on our main arterial routes with congestion, we've got to be aware that there's other routes that need to be kept free and flowing easily. I know from my time on council, there many times we've put speed humps in, and it's often been a knee-jerk reaction for traffic, but then you find that the residents quite understandably find quite a negative impact on a number of roads where residents have lived there 30, some 40 years and end up moving because they've got a speed bump and it just annoys and the impact becomes so great. I concur with Councillor Hodgson, and I hadn't thought about it too much till now. When I was going up and down those roads with my family doing flyers, I was constantly looking over my shoulder and for the kids, because I noticed the cars would come down and then bear out. When you've got a family of 3 or 4, you tend to step a little bit off the footpath. And I became very conscious of that. In fact, holding the kids back and looking over my shoulder, said, continue on, because vehicles would take a little side step or come around your son or daughter, and you'd be very close to the traffic. But I do also urge that, please, if we're going to keep the faith of the community, when we say we're doing a trial, it is a trial, because it's very easy for the public being perceived that if we're doing a trial and then we go, oh, sorry, it's too late, it's in now, we can't afford to take it out, or, tough luck, we're going to lose that good faith to do any other trials in the future. So I support us, as Councillor Rolo I think has done very wisely, keeping the ones on Princess Drive, but removing the ones on the Moana and Bisley Ave for the greater good. And it hasn't been a loss removing those, because it's a great learning experience, both for community and ourselves, that always considering other alternatives to achieve what we're trying to achieve. Because what's happened here is often a knee-jerk reaction thing. This will be the silver bullet, but as we know, speed humps and judder bars aren't the silver bullet they can be. But thank you.
Councillor Stella.
Thanks, Mayor Nick, and good to hear comments of colleagues. I guess to respond first to the whole funding of undoing a trial, we are the governance body. We make decisions. If we want to do that, we simply do it. It's not like there's anything's locked away or it's impossible. That's our responsibility. We shouldn't be throwing around blame or claiming we've painted ourselves into a corner. We can make that decision. First important point that was made by the Deputy Mayor, this trial had specific objectives and they have been met. Second point, what kind of road is this? What is appropriate driving behaviour on that road? It's not a through-going commuter road. It's a local kind of access road. It has deviated from that use, and part of these measures to ensure that our true intent for the purpose of that road is maintained. And as we've seen, those objectives have been met. I do acknowledge that some people along that route are suffering from extra noise that they would have otherwise, and the survey results are important. There is, through no fault of staff, incomplete data here, because we are all under a microscope looking at the situation where we have a trial of traffic calming and we're saying, do we like that or not? Which is justified, and we need to have that information. What's missing is to flip that. And if we consider this road had always had traffic calming, it was safe and convenient for residents to get into and onto the road and back to their properties. There was nobody literally using it as a racetrack. There were appropriate traffic volumes at appropriate speeds. And then we said, hey, let's do a 2-year trial to remove all the traffic calming and we'll survey you about it. what might be the response. We don't have those data, but that's why I asked the officers. I suspect people would say, oh, we've suddenly gone to a street with 30% higher traffic volumes, 20% higher speeds, higher crash rates, more injuries. It's now a rat run. There's literally people racing to the top and back. What are we doing here? And like I say, we don't have those data, but that's what we have to consider in our minds as decision makings, not just focus on this one-way process of we've had this trial, what do you think about it? We've had the good result from the trial. Do we really want to spend $70,000 of taxpayer money to go back to having it as a high-speed, high-traffic volume rat run? Is that a good outcome for our transport network and for our community? I don't believe it is, so I won't be voting in support of the amendment.
Thanks, Councillor Stallard. Any other contributions? That being the case, Councillor Austin.
To the chair. So I have been in the homes, in a home up there when the bus actually did run over the speed cushions, and it was loud and it hit the bump with a noise that causes you to jump. And this is 40 times a day. And we put those bumps there, and we're causing that, those residents. And so I vote to have them removed.
Thank you. Any other contributions? If not being the case, I'm going to enable Councillor Rollo to exercise his right of reply, of which he has up to 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mayor Nick. I would like to say one of my strengths as a councillor is the fact that I don't often need to say lots of words, and I won't take too much time in the right of response, apart from acknowledging the fact that Abraham Lincoln was noted in the debate of a amendment that I'm proposing. So I'll certainly put that on the bingo card tonight. Look, it was shared amongst this debate, and I acknowledge the councillors. We have a different range of views here and acknowledge the way that this debate's been handled. There's the fact that it's been highlighted here today that we're simply looking after wealthy people on the hills, the complete stigma that continues to affect the Tahunanui area. And I deal as a resident of Tahunanui with this on a daily basis, where we simply say just because you live on the hill, essentially you're wealthy. I note that we had one gentleman come here today, present, and then he's walked out the door. I would suggest that, in fact, they're not all here today demanding that we remove these speed bumps, but have done it in a manner. They've allowed the report. They've done exactly what council asked, give us the feedback. It's clear and obvious that they don't want this trial to continue. They would like us to make a decision. And quite frankly, I think that the community of Tahunanui, and particularly these hills, have handled themselves this week in a respectful way when they've seen this report. We've seen times and times again over sensible and also radical things where people email you through the roof, making sure you're on their side. These good people here have simply followed the council process of giving us their feedback and allowing us to make a decision here today. And so as we take this vote in a few minutes, I just highlight the fact that the data is clear and obvious. They don't want them to continue, and we should take their feedback on board. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rollo. I'll ask the Chief Executive to conduct a vote.
April.
Councillor Anderson?
No.
Councillor Austin? Yes. Councillor Brand? Yes. Councillor Courtney?
Yes.
Councillor Hodgson?
Yes.
Councillor Kirby?
No.
Councillor Pakipaki?
Call.
Councillor Rollo?
Aye.
Councillor Skeggs?
Yes.
Councillor Skinner?
Aye.
Councillor Stallard?
No.
Deputy Mayor Rainey?
No.
Mayor Nick?
Yes.
The ayes have it 8-5.
Thank you for the respectful vote in the way that has enabled us to resolve the issue. It has been around for about 6 months, and I do share Campbell's view that the way that the officers and the community has handled one of these issues, it can go either way as well. I'm just thinking, it's 11 o'clock, we usually have a stretch the legs. We've got this next paper on fees and charges. Do we get into it, or do we have another quick rest break? Any views? Let's get into it. Sorry?
Oh, we've got a 50-50. Should we have a division?
Yeah, we're not going to have a vote on that. I'm going to use my discretion of the chair, and we'll get in and do the officers' report part of it, and we'll have a break at about 15:15. So can I please have Michelle and Martin on the proposed fees and charges for 26-27? Welcome. It's a big, complicated report. I wish you well in terms of giving us an overview of it, and then we'll take questions from colleagues.
Kia ora, councillors, kia ora mayor, kia ora alo. As you say, this is a big report, and I would like to acknowledge before we begin the work that's gone into it. It begins in October last year, and there are a number of people that input to it, many of which are sitting behind us today. So Michelle and I are not on our own at the table, and I'm sure you have questions, and staff that are here will be able to answer those questions for you. In terms of the report itself, it's split into three. There are fees that the councillors have been asked to approve today. There are fees that have been approved by the CE. And then there are fees that are going out for consultation. I just would like to draw your attention to those fees that are going out for consultation. Included within those fees are the transfer station fees. We feel that is a significant change, and so we have included it in the consultation package that will go out tomorrow, assuming everything gets approved. So I will hand over to you for questions and take those questions through the mayor.
Thank you. Questions from councillors? Start with Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mayor Nick. Martin, thank you for the report, comprehensive report. Is the transfer station fees the only one that's going out for consultation, or are we having a wide range of?
No, we are obliged legally to go out for a consultation on a number of fees. The transfer station I mentioned because we don't have to go out for consultation, but we've chosen to because we feel that there are significant, there's a significant change there, so we want to get public opinion on that. The other fees that are included in the consultation we do annually because we have to.
Good, thanks.
Councillor Brain, then Campbell, then Councillor Rowan.
Thank you. Through the chair. Thank you for the clear rationale in the report. I'd just like you, if you could please talk a little bit more about the proposed dog hearing fees and the revised waste charges have been checked for accessibility, particularly for households on tight incomes, so that we can be confident that they don't unintentionally create barriers for people to engage in the process.
And thank you for the question, Councillor. As I mentioned, we do have staff here that will be able to talk to those fees. So I would like to invite Rhino up to the table. Rhino up to the table. Just to clarify the question you asked about the dog fees.
The dog hearing fee and the revised waste charges.
And the question. Sorry, through the mayor, and the question again regarding those fees are?
Okay. The proposed dog hearing fee and the revised waste charges have been checked for accessibility, particularly for households on tight incomes, so that we can be confident that they don't unintentionally create barriers for people engaging with the process.
Through the mayor, and yeah, still trying to get clarification on the question. So in terms of the fees that are being proposed, the new fees that have been proposed in the dog licensing area, there are 4, of which one is for two or more dogs. The second is for hearing, a hearing cost, there's a seizure cost, and there's a surrender cost. So the accessibility question, I'm struggling to understand what it is that you're.
You've created new fees. People who have dogs and people who get rid of their waste have tight incomes, and sometimes they are unable to engage in the process because they don't have the money and to pay the fee to engage in that process. So if you take the dog hearing fee, I think it's 250 without it directly in front of me, on top of normal CPI increases, this is a new fee. So people who come to the hearings are generally quite distraught, quite emotional. Their dogs have been impounded, other things, their fees are adding up. We hear quite regularly during those hearing processes that they have tight budgets and that they manage that quite well. If we are now asking for a hearing fee for them to partake in that process, are we then blocking them or preventing them unintentionally from participating? And the same goes for the waste.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Would you like to?
Correct. Through the chair, thank you for the question. That fee is to recover the cost because these hearing fees is for when the dog's been classified as menacing or dangerous. That takes a lot of time to do that classification. So when the dog owner can come back and request a hearing, it requires additional time, significant time from the officer, and it also requires counsellors to come in for a hearing. And the proposal is to recover the cost for that additional time.
In terms of the question, we haven't done a check on each. Obviously, we don't know who those people are, and you've made a comment around the fact that there's an assumption that some of those people will be struggling potentially to pay that fee. I acknowledge that. I do know that the number of people that have to go through that process is very small. It's not significant, but in terms of doing a means test on their ability to pay, no, we haven't done that.
Okay, so is that something that we would look at, that they could, as with our rates and our water rates, and also if they were to pay their dog fees in advance, that the person could pay off, or do they have to pay the lump sum for them to engage in the process?
Yes, we can always negotiate the payment of any of those fees.
I've got some questions specifically around waste. On the discussion document on page 15, 172 of our agenda, the piece that I'm failing to understand around the waste stuff and the worry is that we wind these charges up so high that we end up having people dumping illegally. My first question is, what is the overall revenue impact of the proposed charges and the fees? Is it, I've got real sympathy for the poor person, not old, the poor person sitting at the dump. I pull up with my trailer and I've got to try and estimate how many cubic metres under the current system. So that's probably a impossible exercise. So I'm not unsupportive of the change. What I'm trying to do is to understand what is the estimated impact on revenues. Is it just a change, or is it, I'm more than happy, most of the fees are putting up by 3%. What is the percentage change in revenue in moving from the old to the new in respect of solid waste charges at our waste recovery centre?
Thank you for the question. It's a good question. And we have Bevan and Terry here to answer that question. What I will say is that a lot of work has gone into this, into these new fees which are being proposed today. Understanding the current situation in terms of revenue, how that revenue is generated has been a massive part of that, and understanding what we'll be getting going forward with the new proposed fees is obviously important too. So I'll hand over to Terry and he can talk you through that.
Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, good morning. Through the chair, the landfill fee has gone up for our disposal. We have adjusted the charges to recover exactly the same amount of money, so we gain no financial benefit from our changes.
No, that's
this
not
is just to cover cost cover.
That's not the question. I want to know, what is the average percentage increase from current to new that the consumer, our public, will be paying in going to the waste recovery? I know different people will be impacted differently, but we should have a percentage figure as to how much we are increasing our charges.
Yeah, it's a rather difficult question to answer because what we've done is we've changed the price parameters. So what was happening previously was some people may have been charged harder than others and some people may have been charged lighter. We've changed to a system where everyone is charged consistently by quantifiable measurements, where previously there was an estimate of it's a metre or half a metre. Now we know exactly what we're charged.
But haven't you done a budget estimate that says, hey, look, on the current charges we're expecting in this financial year 25-26 this amount, and as a consequence of these changes, this is the amount of revenue we're expecting in 26-27 if these charges are adopted? We must have that figure.
The number difference is about 110,000.
Over what base?
1.12 million.
1.2 million? So I'm sorry. So by my calculation, if I divide 1.2 million by 110, it looks like about a 10% increase.
That would be the overall benefit, yes.
My other part is I do think we need to be in the discussion document a bit more specific. I was confused. When you say the trailer is 6x4, there are still old people who, I think you should say metres. I'm assuming that's what it is. When it says under refuse and green waste, a 6x4 trailer, 6x4 of what? Is it metres?
No, 6 foot by 4 foot trailer. It's just a generic measurement of a modern single axle trailer.
So it's 6 feet by 4 feet?
Yes. Like when you rent a trailer, they come as 6x4s. Yeah.
Well, I think you should say in the description, and when it says additional charge per metre, is that cubic metre or linear metre?
It's a 6x4 trailer, basically flat, will be approximately 750 to 800 cubic litres, or 0.8 of a metre. Whereupon, if someone came in with it mounted up with your board and strapped down, we can actually then add further above that.
I understand that, but in the discussion document, we say the old fees, and I'll read it to you exactly. Refuse thereafter per cubic metre. Metre 3, $107. Under the new proposal, it doesn't say cubic metre. I think it's confusing. If you mean cubic metre, and that's what I'm confused myself. Is it intended to be a cubic metre?
No, it's intended to have the flexibility for the staff to add on for above the core or base weight, or base volume rather.
Is it a linear metre then?
Sorry?
Is it a linear or cubic metre? The charge of $136 that we're being asked to go out to consultation, is it a linear or cubic metre? They are quite different things.
Sorry, it's cubic metre.
Or why don't we say that?
Through the mayor, we can make those changes and make it clear.
I think you should be clear about what the 6x4 is, 6x4 without saying what the management is. And I think you should say both with green waste and the like. If it means cubic metre, you should say it. And the reason I think it's confusing is because people may think it's an extra metre length on the trailer rather than actually an extra cubic metre of waste. And I do think that we're going for the extra charge. We are going from 107 to 136. That is a very large increase in the per cubic metre charge that we're making. Am I interpreting that correctly?
No, basically you are correct.
Mr. Chair, if it helps, on the Townsville City Council website under the fees and charges, there's quite an elaborate table that they've got that would answer all of your questions. I just wonder whether or not that some of that information in that format would be able to be migrated into the information that's provided.
Through the mayor, absolutely. We are looking at also for staff on site, being able to make sure that it is easy to understand exactly what it is that you're paying for, what that capacity looks like. So we'll be doing that when we're charging the fees through the charging fees, and I take on board that we need to be clearer in our consultation. So,
sorry, can I?
Councillor, pack it in. Councillor.
Yeah, through the chair. I will say that the formulas that are stated out there aren't exactly deadpan certain when you turn up. So I turned up there a month apart this year with exactly the same volume of material. I know because it was in 44-gallon drums, and those are my containers, the waste from my workshop. And then it was $54, and then the next time I turned up, it was 87. I think I paid for it. So the level of consistency there, and I said to the guy that I paid this last time, and he said, "Oh, you should have paid more." As you were, keep going. So.
Through the mayor, yeah, that is one of the reasons that we are looking at changing the way in which we charge. So it's easier for people to understand, easier for staff to work out what to charge. So we're expecting it to be a benefit to both the customer and to council in terms of the way in which.
Well, I will add, both times when I turned up, I told them an exact litrage amount of what we've got, because 205 is a 44-gallon drum.
This is a dilemma for other refuse stations as to how you measure, and I think it's good that you're making the change. I've got concerns about how much we're putting the fees up by. What is the most common method? Is the new method that we are proposing with wool bale, car boot, UW, 6x4 trailer, and then an extra charge per cubic metre? Is that the most common method that's used around the country? Have we had a look around?
Through the electronic tills, we know where our customers come from and what volumes they bring in and how they're charged. And we actually find that 80% of our customers are bringing in a wool bale or smaller.
Yeah.
Where wool bale is 400 litres. Yeah.
Councillor Kirby?
Kia ora. My coffee hasn't quite kicked in yet, so you might have to help me out a little bit. When I was door knocking around Bullen Street, a number of people raised to me the cost of this. They sort of said that it was cheaper for them to take a trailer out to Mott and dump out in Tasman. So I wondered just, have we run this data past what the charges are for our Tasman colleagues so we're not burdening them? Is there any consistency or any consideration there?
Yeah, obviously I've done a lot of comparisons. Depending on what you've got in your trailer, it may be cheaper to go to Richmond, it may be cheaper to go to Mott. But of course, that's also a different financial structure where rates are partly subsidising. Being a closed account, we basically have to be self-funding. We have the local disposal levy from landfill, which covers half the landfill, but our aim is to cover the cost of disposal of the material brought in. So whatever's brought in, as long as we can cover the disposal cost, the rest is covered as a fixed cost. However, we don't have any other funds to draw on. So that's why the prices have been set to recover a set amount of revenue. We don't have a weighbridge, and it's going to be incredibly difficult for us to put a weighbridge in where they do have weighbridges, so they're generally working off weights. So we've checked it with about a dozen other councils around the country, and a lot of similarly sized transfer stations around the country who don't have weighbridges use a very similar system and are actually pricing on a pretty similar basis.
Any other questions? Councillor Stella.
Thanks, Nick. I did send through a question about the fee for replacing a lost library card. And I am channeling the former Deputy Mayor Rohan, Neil Stevens here. I hope he's watching it.
He'll be riveted.
Yes, this will be the highlight of this year. I wonder if you could comment on just the possibility that fee in itself could result in a situation where children and young people, they lose their card and the caregiver says, yeah, we'll get it, but $4 actually no, and they just sort of lose access to the library. The possibility of that and what measures we have to avoid that situation happening.
We have Kate from the library who'll be able to talk you through that.
Kia ora, thanks for the question. So the question is, would that disadvantage a child's account unfairly? Is that?
Well, just I guess we want to have appropriate charges and fees, but not such that it might result in lack of access for people who want to keep that fairness element. So just whether that replacement fee, like in your opinion, it's fine, we can manage it in a certain way so no one's going to be miss out, or whether you think actually we have noticed it as a barrier that a child loses the card and the caregiver says, look, all this other stuff's happening, the fact they have to pay for a fee, let's just not do it.
Yeah, I think in practice, operationally, we have quite a lot of discretion on how we apply that charge. So I'd be pretty confident we would not disadvantaging someone in that way. Yeah.
That's what I need to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, councillor Rollo?
Thanks, Mayor Nick, and I know it's a controversial question. It comes up every year. I'm sure I ask it, but are we aware as a council, and it's perfectly thankful that TDC are running open workshops at the moment, that in their annual plan they're currently reviewing, they're not proposing to increase dog registrations. And I know that we are within this only by CPI, but just wonder, are we, I know it's a very minor thing, but they're a community that like to they can bark if they need to. Needed to get that in there. Do we actually consider this Nelson versus Tasman? Because I look at it as a Champion Road versus Champion Road situation. I know they go far and wide, but if I can have a dog cheaper on one side of Champion Road, it gets a wee bit silly. Do we consider this? And then I have a question around the alcohol licensing for a rhino.
I would encourage Rena to come to the table. But in terms of what we charge and how we compare ourselves against other councils around the country, we do that. That's important. We make sure that we are consistent and in the right ballpark. We also obviously have a revenue and finance policy that we have to stay within. So we have a percentage range there. So when we adjust any of the fees that we've got within the fees and charges report, we consider all of that.
It's probably appropriate as Chief Executive for me to make a comment in this space. And look, we are facing a rate cap issue, and we've got to ensure that user pays where it's appropriate. I take the challenges from there. We don't want to disadvantage certain sectors of society, and that's why we bring some of these things to the governance table for you to think about. But if you want to compare dog charges between us and Tasman, also compare our rates charges between us and Tasman. The rates rises in Tasman are significantly higher than we are proposing. So it's where the cost sits. I've got to run the council. I've got to run a budget. I've got to bring in the money, and we've got to deliver a service. I think we've done exceptionally well, both at the governance table and the staff, to keep our rates rises to a sensible amount. But to do that, we've also got to put up charges where it's appropriate. But it's for you as governors to decide sometimes, actually, this charge may not be appropriate or whatever, but that's the context I want you to put those charges within.
And just, look, I just look at that. I'll raise it every year because I've got some friends from that society who they start barking if I don't raise the dog registrations. But I just want to come now to 113 around the alcohol licensing fees, and just note in answering this, asking this question, I do as a councillor and not a member of the DLC. And we're proposing there a $100 fee for the advertising of the liquor license. And is that to get it in the newspaper, or is that to get it online? And if it's to be in the newspaper, do we have to put it in the newspaper?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. That's correct. That fee is the legislation actually requires that the applicant need to do the public notification. However, councillors across New Zealand actually do that function, and I think it's just to shortcut the whole process so that when the application goes to the DLC, we can prove that the statutory obligation's been met, that it's been advertised, it's on the council website, it goes into the paper.
So do we need to put it in the newspaper? Can it just go online and they obviously plaster it on their building that they're doing it? Is it a must that it goes in the newspaper?
Well, we put it on our website, and there's also physical notices that need to be displayed prominently.
I think the question that I think is Councillor Rollo's question, that it applies to a number of areas, is where we are compelled by law to advertise in the newspaper, we've got to suck it up. But are we sure with respect to these liquor licenses that is required? The number of people in our community that are getting a newspaper is becoming very small. Websites are where bulk of people are getting information. Do we know the answer to that question? Are those liquor license applications required by law to be notified in the newspaper where we have to pay an advertising fee or not?
Don't know that. What the correct answer to that?
Through the Mayor, in terms of consultation and normal compensation and fees and charges are a good example of that. We are going to go out for consultation tomorrow. following this meeting, we would advertise those through the paper, through a series of avenues that are standard. So we can check, in terms of exactly what is required from a legal perspective, but in terms of standard procedures for council, that is one of the avenues that we do.
Can I just check with respect to the specific question of Councillor Rollo on these alcohol listen fees? Are they going out for consultation or today is a final decision?
Today is a final decision on that particular fee.
Can I just signal then on 100 item 113 on page 130, so everyone's aware. Fees for alcohol licensing. We've got an option there: approves the new fee for the activity, recommended, or we don't need to approve it. And I'm just wanting to signal that if we don't need to put it in the newspaper and we can do it by the means of putting it online and plastering it on the building of the applicant, then I think it's a fee that we should not be considering and be looking at a new method of the advertising. I think I read the newspaper every week as a 28-year-old, but I think it's one of these things that we shouldn't be pressuring these applicants in, that we need to put it in the newspaper. I mean, on the front of their building, on the line, online, that's enough for me if you ask me, but I'm only one voice and that's my view. Sorry for debating in question time.
No, but I'd like to get clarity.
Sorry.
Yeah, you responded, then I'll have a fifth question.
So through the mayor, I guess the true test is whether people get the opportunity to see it. So if we are consulting, then we need to obviously make sure that people are given the opportunity to see that, whatever we're consulting on. So I would like to also add that there is the option for the person applying for the license to do their own advertising. That is there. We don't have to do it. But standard practice for councils is that they do, for the reasons that Reino has outlined, which is around the process and speeding up that process and making sure that it's done correctly.
I don't want to make your job too tough, but how hard would it be to move the decision on the new fees under the Sale and Supply of Liquor Act, to move it from the decision today into the consultation document? Would that be that hard? And that would then enable us to get more information, just scrutinise whether we in fact do legally have to publicly advertise before we make a final decision.
Through the mayor, no, we can do that. That's possible.
So I'm a lot more comfortable that way, because we can just get a bit more information and kick the tires. The hospo sector is under quite a lot of pressure, and I don't want the ratepayer subsidising alcohol, but equally so I want our hospitality to be strong. So if I'm getting nods around the table to taking that step of putting the new charge for alcohol licensing into the consultation document, and we'll make a final decision after we've got a bit more information, got a response.
Yeah, I'm comfortable. I just want to make a comment around this level of the government are changing some of the regulations around them requiring us to put things in the paper. That's changing as I don't have my expert here, but so our requirement to publicly put it in a newspaper is changing through some of the new legislation. I'm not sure exactly how this one is going. I do want to acknowledge that there was a specific charge that the government recently required us to put on businesses, and we were one of the very few councils that didn't put that charge in. And I don't know, Martin, if you can remember what that one was, but it was about $120, and I said, we will suck that up for the first year. It was a choice of whether we put it on or not. So we do not want to put charges on. Mandy will know.
Can you know what was the area where we declined to put the charge in at 120, Mandy? You remember?
No.
Okay.
Speed up and move now.
It was a new license thing that we were supposed to put on, and we said no, let's not put that on. And I know that the other councils, local councils to us, put it on, and we decided not to.
Oh, that was the food, under the Food Act, there was a administration levy.
There you go.
That we are proposing to do that now.
Yes,
we are proposing that.
But for the first year, we said let's not.
We said let's not do that.
We weren't the first, but we're doing it. Can you answer, Mandy, the very specific question from Campbell, and that is, does the current Liquor Licensing Act require, or regulation, 2013, require us to advertise in the newspaper, or we just do it as practice?
So yeah, I've just looked up the legislation.
Good.
So the legislation requires on licenses to give public notice public notice in the interpretation means a notice published as required for the purpose.
But I don't want to be the niggly lawyer. I am absolutely sure the word published now includes on a website.
Well, if it does, we can change practice.
So what we're going to do on that one is put it into the consultation document, and for officers to have a look, what would the charge be if we limited it to only publishing on our website rather than publishing in a newspaper? Councillor Brand?
On this particular topic, the Act actually states public notification of any application for or renewal of an alcohol licence to be either in a newspaper or on a website page established by the TAs or both.
Okay, so it gives us the choice. I don't want us to make a decision on the run. We've got the opportunity to go public consultation. We're just like officials, just have another look at that. And then after we've consulted, we can make a final decision as to whether we want it. I have a view, and that is I pick up the public notices of the newspaper, and there are these most mundane, boring notifications. It doesn't seem very good use of the public money. I totally understand when we're required to do it by law. If we have the discretion, my preference would have it only on the website as a means of reducing costs. Okay, well, that was with that issue. Thank you, Mandy. Councillor Skinner.
Quick question on regards to refuse, solid waste and green waste. Green waste, I'm a little bit out of touch now, but years gone by we had private operators doing it, and then we were deciding between ourselves if we offer a service or not. Are we aware of any private operations? We used to be blessed with some right next door to our dump site, and they could take it, and then we started providing it, or they closed down, etc. Are there any private organisations? So these costs are getting horrendous.
Through the chair, sorry, just asking a question. Do you mean curbside collection or processing?
No, green waste. I've got a load of hedge clippings. I compost it all at home, but understandably people want it taken away from their property when you work on their property. In the past, we were blessed with places that took green waste and processed it very cheaply, if not for free. They turned it into compost like they do at Richmond. And then we were looking at processing green waste as going back about 5-10 years ago. Currently, are there other providers doing the green waste, and B, are we sort of getting in on there?
Through the chair, yes, there are two, both in Richmond Hope area, Aswood and Green Waste to Zero. The green waste that we collect at the Nelson Waste Recovery Centre goes to Green Waste to Zero under an agreement we have at the moment, because we do not process it. So we basically take revenue for it and then deliver it and pay a disposal fee where they process it into compost.
And the costs here seem high. That's sort of net zero. Is that the cost of us getting it to them? I mean, I'm not sure what they charge now.
Yeah, well, we're paying $132 a tonne, but the gate fee that we charge for green waste is exactly the cost of transport and disposal. It doesn't include the packing. It's just the cost. So if we charge $100 at the gate, it means it's costing us $100 to transport it to Green Waste to Zero and pay the disposal fee.
What do they charge? Is it free to drop it off there now, or is it
sorry?
With the organisation Green Waste to Zero, what do they charge if you delivered it straight there? If someone was like myself, done a trailer straight there, or
I don't know their per tonne charge to a residential customer. People turn up with trailers and it's $18, $20.
Free. Okay, I realise these costs, but it does seem like we are an expensive route to get it to them. Am I wrong?
There's also other benefits because by supplying the service of the transfer station, we're stopping residents from Nelson having to drive 11 k's there and 11 k's back. If we didn't have a transfer station, there'd be 3,500 more tonnes of emissions just by transporting the material.
Yeah, okay. Think that the old I see here when we're talking about these. Well, so Nick Smith, I was going to blame him first with just going by imperial 6 by 4 foot, unless you meant 6 metre by 4 metre. I thought, well, I'll take my 6 metre by 4 metre trailer in for that. But I assume you were mixing and matching 6 foot by 4 foot, and I was going to blame you, but I see it's in the report there, 6 by 4. I still use feet and inches. I'm 6'3".
I just thought with New Zealand moving to the metric system in 1972, that's the last 50 years, referring to a 6 by 4 is a bit old fashioned.
Yeah, I still pace length of the room by my feet, which are exactly a foot, and work it out by then. And I've got to convert it to metric, and then etc.
My main reason for the clarity was I think the 6 by 4 in one line is confusing when the next line you're talking about meters, and that's why I would prefer to have it specified so we know what we're doing.
So just in regards to my questioning, I realise it's good to have all the different methods that people measure with. Do we get to the point where we really actually get a measuring tape out, or we weigh it, etc., or compress? I know there's got to be a bit of movement and flexibility to make that ease going through, but we seem to be getting so many variations. I empathise with your difficulty in this, and you've gone great measures. But we get to a point where we literally need to get a measuring tape out, and or do we have quibbles? Do we have quibbles at the gate?
Yeah, well, through the chair, we also have very skilled and good staff at the kiosk, and they have the discretion to go, well, you've bought in hedge trimmings.
Yep, that's
obviously going to go when it gets in the compactor, and they charge according to the compaction. So they very understand that all the maths behind the pricing structure has been on a compacted into a bin, and they understand how that works. So there'll still be a human factor. This couldn't be done by robots.
No, okay, that's unavoidable. Thank you. Cheers.
If there are no further questions, I'm going to take an adjournment for 5 minutes. Thank the officers for their work on this paper. When we come back, we will debate it. I'll be looking for a mover and seconder. It is my ambition by 12:30 to both complete this statement as well as the local government statement and then move into confidential business post-lunch. Council's adjourned till 11:40. final documents in our agenda. So we understand what those amendments are. It's to move the liquor licensing new charge from resolution 1 to 3. That was it. We will consult on that, and a couple of minor changes to the text. It's just making plain that there's been a final tweak. It's not necessary to get into the detail of what they are. Is there a colleague that is prepared to move and second the adoption of the resolutions? Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Seconded by Councillor Brand. It is now open for debate with Councillor Anderson if he wishes to make the first contribution.
No, I'll say comment.
I would just make the brief comment that council faces a real tension in setting these fees and charges with our overall ratings budget. Now, I have seen some councils that as a consequence keep their rates low and really rate these charges up, and others do the opposite. I think what's being proposed by our officers here is quite balanced. Most of the charges are going up by no more than inflation, and I think that is fair. I also think it is fair that where people are using specific services, whether they be libraries or pools or the golf course or our building and other services, that they are paying the bulk of those costs. The one area where I'll be very interested in the public's response is I am supportive of the work our staff have done in changing our landfill or the refuel centre charges. I do think the current system is quite confusing. However, I am concerned at the scale of the increase. The per cubic metre charge, an increase of 27%, is quite high. And I note some of the charges, for instance, the boot load, which is the most common, is actually quite constant. I will be interested through the public consultation process and we're really interested in the response as to where we get that balance. There has been very large increases in our charges at our recovery centre, and I worry that we get to the point where people start dumping their rubbish, which imposes far greater costs. So I'm happy for it to go out to consultation, but when the document comes back, I want to give that quite a lot of scrutiny to make sure, yes, supportive of the change in the style, but wanting to have greater scrutiny of how much we are putting those charges up. Councillor Skinner.
Cheers. Once again, I think it's going out to the public. I'm horrified by the costs of refuse and green waste. $163 for a back of the ute load of rubbish. I realise there's some real costs, and sometimes they can be hard to perceive. But also, as I've brought up in the past, we've got some costs which we sort of attribute to other things like recycling and carbon credits, etc., that fall upon us. And this just puts on more and more hardship for Joe Bloggs. But at those sort of prices, it's almost got the point. I drive to Rye Valley to take my waste to the transfer station there. But we do really need to relook at this and really pull it apart, because this is getting just out of hand, these costs. Thank you. But I do appreciate the officers and the way they've broken it down, etc., and reported it. But the Joe public, we've got to really reconsider our waste products, etc., because and the costs that we add to them, which many are indirect, in my view. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Skinner. Councillor Pakipaki.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair. This is quite a challenging moment to sort of engage in, and I just reflect back on Councillor Rollo and I, prior to us being elected members, we had quite a few, him drinking coffee, me having probably a water, talking about the sensitivities around dog registration, if you recall, and that it was political suicide to basically get involved with anything close to that. And similar to the to rubbish, and because a lot of these rubbish and higher fees, all of these things affect people quite directly, and it's something that's quite measurable, that they don't necessarily they would get more upset about these because they're quantified rather than the separation of the wide range of services that council provide. So that's where there's a degree of sensitivities that's needed around this. Travelling internationally, I've been around the world looking at different things. And one of the things I noticed was while in my time in Japan was their approach to rubbish. And I guess there's a few members here that have been over there and spent some time. And I was absolutely shocked and amazed at their behaviour around rubbish and waste. And it is at the absolute minimum. They have a culture that has been developed to be able to, because it's so exorbitantly expensive to be able to dispose of things, they have changed their behaviour. And this is a really good lesson to not simply just sit there and go, it's not fair, it's terrible that the prices are going up, I'm not prepared to change my behaviour. That's not something that it's not sustainable, it's not something that we should go forward, and it's not something that I would say that being a good tupuna for our mokopuna is, that's not something that I want to burden them with. So changing our behaviour, changing their behaviours, and to be able to address the rising costs, that's one of the solutions. It's not just simply a have to keep on reaching into our pocket to money we don't have. So commend the officers and the work that has to go around this, and I bet you they know the sensitivities around it as well. So I just wanted to extend a thanks out to that, but also be aware of the eggshells that we're walking on when we do start talking about fees.
Thanks, Councillor Pakipaki. Councillor Rollo.
Thanks, Mayor Nick. And just in the short term of taking on the lead of co-sport liaison, it's been interesting working alongside my colleague, Councillor Kirby, and the amount of groups that use our facilities and venues through this town who have all been almost off the same song sheet, that our facilities every year go up in price, yet the fees for these good young people that are trying to take up sport become more and more difficult due to the cost of living pressures. And I really urge us as a council, while we go out for consultation, that in the next year and as we lead into the LTP, we really need to take a really good, clean look at how we can help our rangatahi and our young people engage in sport recreation that requires the use of our venues and facilities, because it's getting very challenging out there. And Sarah and I have heard story after story from different groups where actually just being able to go and play the sport's becoming unaffordable because of the cost of our venues. And so I know today's not the day that we can fix that, but in our LTP, I think we really need to take a clear look at how we can work alongside our good people, Sport Tasman and other groups who are encouraging people to get active, and how we can help remove those barriers. And the other one that I'll just highlight there, and I'm comfortable but not overly supportive of the $100 fee there for liquor licensing. I am quite happy to share that I'm a advocate for making that process as user friendly as possible, and we've heard from people in the past that hasn't necessarily had been the experience that they've had, not just here but throughout other parts of this country of ours. And I think when we have a council that's saying that we're open for business, if we can remove things from the newspaper and do and follow the law by how we advertise that, I think we should really be putting a front foot down to make sure that we work with these good users to make that process as user friendly while following the law. Thank you.
Councillor Brand.
Yeah, thank you, through the Mayor. I just want to highlight that I appreciate that the staff have taken the time to provide the rationale for removing obsolete or outdated fees and charges and then replacing them with things that are actually more relevant for today and what the public are accessing council for. And while some of the fees are just straight out through the CPI increase, which is commendable compared to what other councils have been doing with theirs, I do want to acknowledge that, as Councillor Skinner pointed out, some of the things around the waste and the dogs do become quite emotive and hard and tricky on people. And as long as we've got the rationale clear so that we're not overcharging, or we also acknowledge that people go through tight financial times, that they are able to access ways to pay those with and interact with the council where needed to ease the financial burden on them so that they too can enjoy a dog or legally, as well as other measures. I think going out for consultation as it is, and the feedback that we should be getting from people will certainly put us forth into the right direction with where the council is moving.
Thank you. The mover may have his right to reply if he wishes. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I'm happy with this. I'm quite interested in the consultation. So this isn't a Bisley or an airport. This is going to affect everyone, all ages, all cultures. So I feel there's an opportunity here for us to, and I've talked about it many times, of us doing things differently in and around consultation. So I'm very interested, a little excited, and this being an opportunity and engaging our community better. And I'd like this to be an opportunity.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. I'm going to put the resolutions 1 to 5. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, say no. That is carried. Again, I acknowledge officers' work on that, and we look forward to the next stage post-consultation. We now move to the item on the agenda on page 188, the Statement of Local Governance, and invite Amy and Nikki.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Through the chair, I'll take the report as read. I'm happy to answer any questions.
It's a legal requirement of the Act for us to produce a document. We're only being asked to note it. It seems pretty pro forma, but more than happy to take any questions that elected members may have of her. That's the style I like. I'm going to move from the chair the resolutions 1 to 3, noting our 25-28 local government statement. Is there someone? Councillor Courtney is happy to second. Is there any debate? Yeah. That being the case, I'll put the resolutions 1 to 3. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, carried. That is carried. I now come, and it is my intention just to try and plot through to 12:30 in confidential business. I'm going to move from the chair the resolution recommendation in our agenda to exclude the public with respect to the Local Government Official Information Act. The Deputy Mayor is happy to second that. Any questions or comment on that resolution? That being the case, I shall put it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, say no. That is carried. We'll just give a couple of minutes to enable the doors to be closed and us to move offline.